What is going on, YouTube? So I wanted to come back today, um, start kind of a new video series, something that I did back in like 2015, 2016, back when I was more on a regular role on YouTube. But something that I thought might be of some intrigue. I've been covering it fairly closely with the Chicago Bulls site that I cover. I got a pretty high up pick. They were involved in the lottery for the bulk of the entire regular season. So after a 5-19 start, firing Fred Hoiberg, the writing was on the wall for them. Now, I wanted to start this with Ja Morant, and a prospect that I know pretty well. I've been watching for a while. I think pretty much anyone who was big into basketball was watching him at Murray State by the time the NCAA tournament rolled around. So also wanted to say I'm not going to dive too deep into cutting up clips, dissecting film, and cutting that into the videos yet until I see if the idea is kind of catching on. And if so, then once I start getting a little bit more in depth, more scouting reports rolling out, then I can start cutting that together. But see how the reaction goes so far. And again, starting out with Ja Morant, Murray State, I believe he was a sophomore coming out, and then had a big sophomore campaign. I mean, he doubled a lot of his averages, pretty much doubled his points per game, his assists, rebounds he did not, but also the concerning part there, and steals, blocks, and also turnovers. So he really didn't get that much more playing time this season than he did last, but he did show improvement across the board, which is something that's obviously very encouraging for his NBA draft stock. Still a rather young prospect. It's not like he was a 4-year starter or anything like that. So we're going to start here with just looking at some of his strengths, weaknesses, what he can improve. And then at the very end, and then I'm going to go into the stats, numbers to back that stuff up, where I think he'll project at the NBA. And then I'm going to give two scores here. One is something that I like to do a little bit for college football recruiting, college basketball recruiting. So I think translating it to the NBA draft can work pretty well here. I'm going to give him a score of how well I think his game will translate to the NBA, what role I think he will take. So that's going to be the first one. I'm going to give that a score of like 1 to 4. One is you're really taking a risk on the guy. I don't think his game's going to translate very well, or he's just bound to be a role player that's going to be stuck in the G League. 4 being obviously immediate impact player, potential for a star. I'll dive a little bit deeper if I give anyone for that. Obviously, Zion's going to fall more into that boat. We're talking about the projected number 2 overall pick here. I will also discuss best landing spots, and then also pretty much as a 1 to 5 here as to how I feel like he will, how he will fit. Probably a good way to describe that. Now, so jump into his offensive game. Ja Morant, he's going to make his money with his explosiveness, his improved shooting ability. He shot much better from 3-point range as a sophomore than he did as a freshman. 36.3% from 3-point range last season. He took a little less than twice as many threes as a sophomore than he did as a freshman, but he also hit 36.3% compared to 30.7% from his freshman season. Points scored, 12.7 points per game. Freshman went up to 24.5 points per game. Free throw shooting went up. The amount that he got to the line nearly doubled. Assist numbers, he got up to 10 assists per game. He did actually pull down less offensive boards, but that was probably because he was jacking up more shots this year. But he also turned the ball over more than 5 times per game, which that was a pretty big knock against him throughout the entire season. Was not necessarily carelessness with the basketball, because his turnover percentage was large, but so was his assist percentage. I think that there just needs to be more consistency with how he distributes the ball. You see a lot of times where he would turn over the ball 2-3 straight possessions with Murray State, and then not 3 straight possessions, but he'd be pretty sporadic. And then for the rest of the game, he would 6-7 nice plays of distributing the ball to his teammates. I think just finding consistency there is going to be a big thing. His his offensive rating did drop from his freshman to sophomore season. I do think that a lot of that was just the amount of turnovers he had per 100 possessions. We're looking at 7.8 turnovers per 100 possessions. But I think there's a lot to like about his numbers once you start taking a little bit of a deeper dive on offense. I mean, a lot of advanced stats with a prospect, honestly, this elite are going to be in his favor. So, I mean, usage rate obviously very high at a place like Murray State for the second best prospect in this draft class. 33.3%, offensive box plus minus 7.9, and then 5.8 offensive win shares. Obviously, the concerning part here, yes, he had an assist percentage over 50%, but he did have a turnover percentage that was, I think, one of the worst in the nation. I'm not wrong about that. Also had just a ton of turnovers in general. So something to watch. Obviously, he's just got to be more careful with the basketball at the next level. A few other things that I liked that he showed as he went through his final season with Murray State. He was good in conference play. True shooting percentage of roughly 61%. I believe on the season he was around 62%. So, played well when it mattered. And then I think the amount that he got to the free throw line was a big thing. Now, he did get a little more than 8 free throw attempts per game. He was shooting around the 81, 82% clip from the free throw line. But I think that's a big thing. Now, with his frame, I believe he's about, 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", in that range. About 180 pounds, if that. So need to watch his physical development there. He's obviously going to have to put on some size. The amount of explosiveness he has in getting to the rack is unbelievable. He's probably the most explosive athlete as a point guard in this draft, at least among the first round prospects. So 3-point shooting, I think that needs to continue to improve. I think that spot up shooting is very mixed results. He didn't show a whole lot of versatility in this, different looks as a spot up shooter, or catch and shoot. Obviously, didn't have much opportunity to catch and shoot, which with how high his usage was. But I think that he, if he refines his game a little bit, could still be a very efficient scorer in the NBA. Distributing ability, again, he showed that he could be a good facilitator, but needs to continue to be smarter with basketball. Not turn over the ball as much as he did just in terms of volume in the NBA. He's going to have tougher defenses to play, for one thing, and for two, he's not going to have the best supporting cast. He's going to have Jaren Jackson Jr. It sounds like that's kind of the nice pick and roll roster build that the Grizzlies are going to try to go with, depending on what happens for them in the summer. But they're not a huge free agent destination usually. Now, move over to his defensive skill set. I kind of got this format confused a little bit with jumping into the stats right away, but it's fine. So defensively showed sparks. There's things in his game that I think are worth noting that show potential at the next level, but there were a lot of possessions that just looked like he wasn't putting as much effort on the defensive end than he was on offense. With how much he had the ball in his hand, that's noteworthy, but his rebounding percentage dropped. His steal and block percentages did go up. So 2.7 steal percentage, even in college, that's pretty good. But we're looking at a pretty big discrepancy between his offensive box plus minus on defense, and same thing with win shares. 5.8 offensive win shares, 2.4 on defense, and then 7.9 offensive box plus minus 2.0 on defense. Defensive rating also dropped, not huge, but dropped a few points from 99.1 to 95.8. So the advanced stats don't love his trends on defense, but 1.8 steals per game, that doubled from his freshman campaign. Excuse me. Sorry, Brayden, just saw your comment there. I do think that Ja Morant is one of the best players in this draft class. Just trying to give my honest opinion on the value and the flaws in his game. Anyway, defensive ability, he shows sparks. I just think his ability is going to have to be refined. His focus probably got to be in a little bit different places, but he's got to, again, put more on his frame. So Ja Morant probably has got to be around, I'd say 190, 195 pounds, but just sturdy up a little bit. He's a little bit thin on not broad shoulders. He's also, I don't believe he's the lengthiest point guard in the world. So, he's quick. He's going to be able to get his steals. If he bulks up a little bit, I think that he could be a better defender inside the arc. But again, there's things here that probably have to be adjusted a little bit. I do think the size is going to have to matter a little bit there. Anyway, move on here. I do think that a lot of his defensive numbers do show that. I think a lot of his defensive numbers do show that he has a lot of potential at the next level. And I mean, just his physical tools. Again, whenever someone's got as much bounce, explosiveness, just raw athleticism as Ja, and just honestly someone that didn't portion their energy so that they could thrive on the defensive end, I think that there's something that we can work with here. Now, move over into what I kind of how I feel like his game translates, landing spots, that sort of thing. So I feel like his game isn't going to translate immediately. I do think that he is going to be an early impact player. If I could give him a scale here from that 1 to 4, I'd give him closer to a 3 than I would a 4, but I think it's kind of like a 3.5. I do think that he's going to make an early impact, could make an immediate impact. He's not going to a situation where he's going to be able to, thrive, be a part of a young core that's going to lead a team to the playoffs right away. The Western Conference is still going to be a difficult road next season. I do think he's going to end up landing with the Memphis Grizzlies. By all indications, it looks like that's where he is going. But I would say he's somewhere between an early impact, immediate impact player. Like I said, if I could give it a 3.5 here, that's probably the rating that I would give. He does have, and if we're talking raw potential here, I'd say top 5 in the draft. Is it a sure thing for him? No, but I do think he has a decently high floor for a player that didn't play at a major or like at a power conference school, and then also pretty much just working off like more than half a season of exposure. He did improve a lot. There's a lot of resume to work off of in terms of like he played 65 games in college, NCAA tournament appearance, even got Murray State to the second round. But I think there's still a lot that he has to improve upon at the level of play that would be in the NBA. So best landing spots here. I just don't think there's any chance the Pelicans try to get him. They have Zion. I think they're going to roll with Zion. I think the Grizzlies are going to be the landing spot there. I'll probably end up doing a separate video on how I feel like he fits, what that lineup will look like, all that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to dive too deep in there. But I mean, Grizzlies rebuild. They get lucky with landing the second overall pick. Them and the Pelicans both didn't have great chances to get the top 2 picks, but the NBA tried to flatten out the draft lottery odds, and that's what they ended up doing. So in terms of the fit there, he'll probably end up replacing Mike Conley, who could be on the move this summer, and then kind of officially start the rebuild there in Memphis. And then the last thing here, what I think his numbers are going to look like his first few years in the league, and then what I think his top end numbers are going to look like. So again, I do think he has a relatively high floor. I'm not the Ja Morant crowd is a very interesting one. I think there's a lot of split decisions here. I mean, he's going to get his points. Like, he's going to be ball dominant, even in the NBA, probably in his first few seasons. I mean, again, the advanced stats did really like him, especially on the offensive end in college. probably should still favor him in the NBA. Is he going to be a double-double player in terms of points and assists? That's going to be hard to say. But I do think that his first few years in the league, we should be looking at a guy that's in the range of like 15 to 17 points per game, probably 6 or 7 assists, which, again, in terms of just stats is pretty good, or in terms of just basic stats. Now, how well his defense translates, you're going to have to wait and see how much. I mean, the Grizzlies tend to be a defensive first team. So in developing that portion of his game should be a good landing spot for him. Getting up to maybe about 1 to 1.3 steals per game, probably ideal for him. Now, rebounds, I think we're looking at a player that's probably going to snag 2 or 3 boards per game. In Murray State, he was grabbing him, 5.7 rebounds per game his sophomore season, but that number actually dropped from his freshman season. A lot of that had to do with his decrease in offensive rebounds. But, I mean, he's an explosive athlete. He's going to have the chance to be able to get his on the glass. Now, again, that just kind of depends on where his focus lies on both ends of the floor. In terms of, like, shooting percentages, things like that, obviously he wants to be a player that's going to have an efficiency rating at least hovering around 16 or 17 his first 2 years in the league, at least get above a league average, even though this is a rather thin draft class. And then I would say just keep the three-point percentage around 36 to 37% at least. Keep improving from where he was at college. You're going to have to draw out for the three-point line in the NBA. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. Defenders are going to be a little bit more capable on the perimeter too. So field goal percentage, he's right around 49, 50% as a sophomore. In the NBA, we're probably looking around 44 to 45%. See how that translates, depending on how his three-point game translates. But again, his three-point shooting was pretty volatile for his 2 years at Murray State. So I do think that Ja Morant has a lot of potential. I do think he has a high floor. I think the amount of volatility that a lot of people in the media would say he has, my opinion, that's just not true. I don't think that he's a automatic star. Also, it seems like there's a lot of fans of teams that were that had good odds in the lottery, the Knicks camp, the Bulls camp, things like that. That we're saying that Ja Morant's the next all-star point guard in the NBA. I don't know about that. He definitely has that sort of potential, but I won't say that right away. But he's a lot of fun to watch, an electric player, a ton of athleticism, and I think he will continue to be at the next level. I do wish he was going to a little bit of a bigger market than Memphis just to see him nationally televised a little bit more. His interest or his development is going to be very interesting to watch. So I'm excited to see what he's able to do more than likely with the Memphis Grizzlies next season. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Again, a lot of these videos are going to be rather long with the prospects that are at the top end of the class, especially if I start cutting in film roll and stuff like that, but also try to keep a little bit more focus here. People do want to jump into the chat. Great. I'll see if I can maybe throw some tidbits in there while I'm going through, but try not to get too distracted there as well. But anyway, that is pretty much it. So yeah.